Kia ora, good evening. At last night's meeting of the Invercargill City Council, it was confirmed that the first stage of the planned inner city rejuvenation project will proceed following the recently completed public consultation process. Consultation on this stage was undertaken between the 10th and 14th of June with the opening of a shop in Cambridge Place Arcade to gather public feedback. 360 written responses were provided. 55% said proposed shelter was about right, 43% wanted more and 2% thought there was too much. Raised lawns gained 80% approval along with the proposed decking that garnered 83% approval. 84% said they were likely to spend more time on S Street following the upgrade. Upgrade work is planned to be undertaken during the October and November period. For more on the inner city upgrade, be sure to tune in to City Talk at 8 p.m. on QTV this evening. More than 30 organisations supporting the Tick for Kids campaign leading up to the general election on 20 September are disappointed to see the latest household incomes report and economic survey. The survey shows that 22% of those aged 0 to 17 years live in poverty. Tick for Kids spokesperson Anton Blank says successive governments have neglected children and voters have allowed them to do so. As a result, children are those most likely to live in poverty with all of the negative health and education impacts that result from it. The report shows that half of poor children are Māori Pacific, half of poor children are from sole parent families and half from two parent. Half of poor children are from households where the highest educational qualification for parents is school or less. Visiting the city was Labour's Associate Education and Tertiary Education spokesperson Megan Woods. Ms Woods was today consulting with some of the city's adult education providers. She says the current government's decision to cut funding to adult education programs in 2009 was a blow to those wishing to re-enter the classroom, a blow she promises will be reversed under a Labour-led government.
For Labour, this was a huge mistake. It didn't offer people the way in which to learn literacy, to learn numeracy, in a way but to get the confidence to get back into a classroom. Many of the children that are living in families in poverty have parents that didn't have a particularly good time at school, and going back into further education is something that they find pretty intimidating. But night classes and adult and community education offers a really good and non-threatening way to get people back into that mode of learning. I've spoken to so many people that have gone back and done formal qualifications by starting out by doing a sewing class or a cooking class, that we really are wasting a huge amount of potential of so many New Zealanders if we don't invest properly in adult and community education.
Back to school age children though, we're looking at better results for NCEA level 2 at least. Things are looking good there. The government's surely headed in the right direction.
Oh look, I mean, whenever there's an increase in results around NCEA, I think that's something that it would be pretty churlish for anyone to say that it wasn't a good thing, and of course it is a good thing. But we want to make sure that we've got the settings right to make sure we can get even more children achieving at our schools, that we have more children achieving everything that they can be. And we know that putting them into smaller classes and freeing up their teachers to be the very best possible teachers that they can be is the way for us to achieve that.
What feedback are you getting? Is education one of those key linchpin issues as it has been in the past for this election?
Oh look, education is going to be one of the primary issues of this election, whether that be from Labour saying it wants to increase the number of hours that parents can access for early childhood education, right through to tertiary and right through to adult and community education. If we don't have the right education training and skills training in place, we can't be the very best country that we want to be. Labour has a real view for a positive New Zealand, and education is absolutely central and vital to that.
Meanwhile, Labour's candidate for the seat of Invercargill has returned from the weekend's Labour Party Congress in Wellington, full of enthusiasm for the party cause. I asked Leslie Soper about the feeling amongst delegates and of her lack of a place on the recently released Labour Party list.
Very upbeat. The feeling and the mood we're getting on the ground as we go out door knocking, campaigning, telephone canvassing, etc. is very different from the nationwide polls, which I'm disregarding really, because they're just in New Zealand there are so many questions about the methodology of taking polls. What it comes down to is actually getting out there and talking to people. We're doing it, and the mood is that people are sick of the inequality, the rising poverty, the rising costs of living. They see Labour's got positive policies that are going to make a difference.
Let's talk about you in particular as a candidate. I watched with interest when that Labour Party list came out. You weren't actually on it at all.
No, I wasn't, Hunter, because I'd taken my name out of the list consideration very early in the piece. I've been a Labour list MP twice before. I'm well known as an absolute, I go out for the party vote as well as the electorate vote. I decided that where my heart is this time is in fighting for the seat of Invercargill. I want to be representing the people of Invercargill and advocating for Invercargill in Wellington. So as far as I was concerned, being a list MP twice, it's time I felt to let some others have a go. We've got some brilliant new candidates who were introduced at the Congress last weekend, and for me, my heart's in Invercargill. That's where I want to be representing.
It's Invercargill all or nothing.
Yes, it is all or nothing. I've made that very clear.
A new system for managing buildings in the event of earthquake or flooding disasters was launched by the Building and Construction Minister Dr Nick Smith at the Australasian Structural Engineering Conference in Auckland today. The key change is the shift away from the traffic light system of red, yellow and green placards to indicate the condition of a building. The colours that will instead be used are red, yellow and white. Red means entry to the building is prohibited, yellow means restricted access and white means light or no damage. The Canterbury earthquake showed that people assumed that a green placard meant the building had no issues and was good to go. In reality, it meant that on visual inspection the building could be used but should have used further detailed evaluation. Stay with us after the break. It's been 12 years since the city last hosted the event, but the wait is over. The 2014 ILT National Brass Band Champs got underway in the city today. Welcome back to South Today News, and as mentioned before the break, for the first time since 2002 the city is hosting the nation's best brass band musicians for the 2014 ILT National Brass Band Champs. Over the coming days 1,000 performers will be entertaining brass band fans at 4 venues around the city. Contest manager Helen Lee says the spin-offs for the city are not only musical but economic as well.
No vacancy signs throughout the whole city. Of course, everybody's got to eat. People do a bit of touristy stuff. We're using local transport, taxis. So, it's a very good thing for our city, especially a regional city. And we're actually very pleased that 26 bands travelled all throughout New Zealand to come down to Invercargill. It's very expensive for bands to travel, but in saying that, Invercargill travel every year and attend every contest. So this is a great way to repay that sort of dedication back. Yeah.
We're very passionate about our brass bands down here. But is it the same nationwide? Is that support still there as it was? The entries staying firm?
Well, our entries are staying firm, and I'd have to say that our junior entries are growing, and a lot of bands like Ascot Park Band here in Invercargill have got a really good training program, and more bands are starting to get into that training program. So children from as young as 8 can learn to play in a band. By the time they go to high school, they're actually very competent players. So when they arrive at year 9, they could be the leaders of their jazz band or their orchestra because they've learnt through community brass banding. Every city, every town is different. Some cities have one band with a training program. Some bands cities like Christchurch have, 6 bands within Christchurch within different grade levels. Bands come and, strength goes in wanes with different bands depending on who's leading it, really, whether it's the conductor or whether you've got a really good administration, because it takes a lot of volunteers and a lot of behind the scenes to make it work and to make it very good for the people, that they're getting expert teaching and that the organisation is happening so that they can turn up to a band hall and there's somebody there and they've got music and there's things to work towards.
Take us through what's happening tomorrow and into the weekend.
Okay. National Championships, tomorrow is the open solo events, so that's where people come and play for their individual instrument. They play a piece of music to a judge. The judge adjudicates, gives points. The winner of that event goes on to play in the evening at our premier Champion of Champions event. So that's from 9 o'clock tomorrow throughout the whole day. It's running in 4 venues and it's all free. People can come along and listen, so they can just pop in and they can hear a couple of instruments here and a couple of instruments there. The Champion of Champions, as I said, premier event, that's a ticketed event down at the Christian Centre, but people just come up to the door and get your tickets there. Once the solo events are over, on Friday we start with our band events, and we have 26 bands here in Invercargill competing. So our bands run in 4 different grades. So our top bands, A grade band, and of course Ascot Park are a very competitive A grade band. They'll be playing at 4 o'clock tomorrow on Friday afternoon. That's when that A grade event starts. Through the day, starting right at 8:30 in the morning, we've got our C grade bands, which Ascot Park Auxiliary Band play in, so they'll be playing there. If the weather's fine on Friday at 1 o'clock, we've got a street march event, and that's down through Kelvin Street. So there'll be 24 bands marching there. So pretty tricky for bands to march, play, stay in line. But
So it's a real test for them, isn't it?
It is a real test, but it's a great thing for the public because the outdoor sound, the band sound just carries, and to see bands, fully dressed, uniform, regimented. I've got to say that band people find it's very difficult to do, and it's probably their least favourite thing that they like doing as part of the contest. But it's part of our heritage, and it's a really great public event.
So what are you looking for with these musicians?
Well, I guess the price of admission things are, can you play the notes, and can you play in time, and can you play in tune? But mostly what I look for is a performance that I guess moves me a little more than the others. Something that's you'd pay money to listen to it.
What is the standard like in New Zealand? You've been involved for some time, which we'll get to shortly.
Yep.
But what is the standard like?
At the high end, it's phenomenal. There are players who have grown up in the brass band scene in New Zealand who are playing in major symphony orchestras in Sweden, Finland, the UK, America. And in the middle there are some really phenomenal amateur players, and at the low end you've got 8, 10, 12-year-old kids who are embarking on the hobby of a lifetime. So it's an extraordinarily good standard here.
There is something for everyone, isn't there? You mentioned hobby for a lifetime. It is off camera. You mentioned you can keep doing this forever.
Yeah, I think this week you'll probably see people who are 8 years old and people who are 80-something years old all participating. It's it's a bit like golf. It's a bit of a leveler. Once you get on the golf course or in the band room, you're all equal. You'll have people who have run the Prime Minister's office and people on the dole, and in the band room they all get bollocked the same way by the conductor, and then they have a beer later. It's a great hobby.
You've been a competitor yourself. No one likes to talk too much about their own achievements, but you've achieved a lot.
Well, I've been doing this for 40, 45 years, so I've had a couple of good successes along the way. I've done this as a bands person for several decades now, as a soloist and as a conductor as well, and occasionally, like this week, as a judge.
So a busy week ahead. Is there anyone you can single out now, or you're looking on every day as a surprise, containing surprises?
Well, you like surprises. Surprises are good in music, but there are probably 3 really, really fine A-grade bands in New Zealand that everyone should listen to if they get the chance. Woolston from Christchurch, Wellington Brass from Wellington, obviously, and the Dale Wool Band from Onehunga in Auckland. They would probably be most people's picks of the big 3.
And we'll certainly be following the progress of the brass band champs over the coming days, and let's hope for fine conditions for the parade on Friday. Well, that's all from the news desk for today. Sports is up next. Don't forget to tune in for City Talk at 8 p.m. Have a great evening.